The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets in that dingy Reno bar, casting jagged shadows over sticky tabletops and the haze of cigarette smoke that clung to everything like regret. It was well past midnight, and 21-year-old Lucy wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that night, her arms aching from double shifts that blurred into one endless grind. All for her little brother's college dreams, the one light she refused to let flicker out. She forced a smile at the rowdy regulars, her voice steady as she poured another round. But deep down, exhaustion gnawed at her like a secret she couldn't shake. Then the door swung open with a creak that sliced through the low hum of country tunes, and in stumbled a stranger, tall, reeking of cheap whiskey and malice, his tattooed knuckles flexing as his bloodshot eyes locked on her like a predator spotting prey. What happened next would rip through her world, but it would also summon guardians from the darkness she never saw coming. Lucy had always been the girl who said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. The one who laughed off catcalls and dodged wandering hands with a quick sidestep and a polite nod, because bills didn't pay themselves and dreams didn't chase you. That night, though, as the clock ticked toward 2 a.m., the bar's usual rhythm faltered when this outsider slapped his empty glass down harder than necessary, his gravelly laugh cutting sharper than broken glass. "Hey, sweetheart," he slurred, leaning too close, his breath hot and sour against her cheek. "Pour me another, and make it quick." She nodded, keeping her eyes down, pouring the amber liquid with hands that trembled just a fraction. Professional habit, masking the knot twisting in her gut. But as she turned to escape back to the safety of the kitchen, his meaty fingers clamped around her wrist like a vice, yanking her back with a force that sent her heart slamming against her ribs. Time slowed then, the jukebox's twang fading to a distant echo, as he grinned with yellowed teeth and snarled, "Let's see who can save you now," his free hand clawing at the collar of her faded uniform shirt. The fabric gave way with a sickening tear, one button popping free, then another, exposing the lace edge of her bra and the raw vulnerability beneath. The bar plunged into a stunned hush, glasses frozen mid-air, eyes wide, but bodies rooted in place. Because who steps into a storm like that for a stranger's daughter scraping by? In the far corner booth, shrouded in leather and the faint glow of a neon beer sign, sat the Hells Angels, 5 of them, broad-shouldered silhouettes etched with the club's insignia, flaming skulls wreathed in red wings, badges of battles fought in shadows most folks never saw. They weren't the monsters the headlines painted. No, these were men who'd traded war zones for highways, their ink-mapping scars from deserts in Iraq, and the bottle after coming home broken. Ryder, the tallest among them, nursed a warm beer, his calloused fingers tracing the faded eagle tattoo on his forearm, a reminder of the brother he'd lost overseas, the guilt that still woke him in cold sweats. He'd been watching Lucy for months now, not in some creepy way, but like the big brother, he'd failed to be back home, slipping her extra tips when she wasn't looking, nodding approval at her tired jokes, because, in her quiet grit, he saw echoes of the girl he'd left behind in his youth. As the stranger's laugh echoed like a taunt, Ryder's jaw tightened, the veins in his neck pulsing like warning lights. He rose then, slow and deliberate, his heavy boots thudding against the warped wooden floor like the first rumbles of thunder rolling in from the Sierra Nevada. His brothers flanked him without a word, Tank with his shaved head gleaming under the lights, Viper cracking his knuckles, their presence swelling the air thick with unspoken promise. The drunk turned, smirking through his stupor, oblivious to the wall of muscle closing in. "What are you going to do, old man?" "This ain't your fight," he spat. But Ryder's voice cut low and lethal, gravel wrapped in steel. "You picked the wrong bar tonight, son. And the wrong girl." The punch landed like Judgment Day. A single, thunderous hook that connected with the man's jaw, sending him sprawling across the floor in a tangle of limbs and shattered dignity. the jukebox stuttering to silence as if the whole world held its breath. Lucy gasped, her knees buckling, hot tears blurring the scene as she clutched the remnants of her shirt to her chest, not just from the terror still clawing her throat, but from the sheer shock of it. Someone, finally, had seen her. Ryder dropped to one knee beside her, his massive frame folding gentle as a prayer, shrugging off his weathered leather jacket with hands that could crush bone but now trembled just a touch with the weight of what he'd unleashed. "Here," he murmured, draping it over her shoulders, the worn hide still warm from his body, carrying the faint scent of motor oil, rain-soaked asphalt, and something deeper, unyielding loyalty. "Nobody touches you like that again. Not while I'm breathing." His eyes, stormy blue and lined with years of hard miles, met hers without pity. Just a fierce, quiet vow that wrapped around her frayed nerves like a lifeline tossed into churning waters. The other bikers formed a loose circle, not aggressive now, but protective, their shadows merging into one unbreakable shield as sirens wailed closer, blue and red lights piercing the grimy windows like accusatory fingers. The cops arrived in a flurry, statements taken, the bar's grainy security footage rolling on a laptop screen, capturing every rip and roar in cold pixels. The stranger groaned from the floor, cuffed and dragged out like yesterday's trash. But Ryder stood tall, answering questions with clipped truths. No bravado, just the raw honesty of a man who'd stared down worse than a badge. As the chaos ebbed, leaving only the acrid tang of spilled booze and Lucy's shaky breaths, she whispered, "Why?" Ryder just shrugged, a ghost of a smile cracking his bearded face. "Because some lines you don't cross. And, darlin', you're family now." But as the door clicked shut behind the last uniform, leaving the bar echoing with unspoken what-ifs, Lucy wondered if this fragile shield could hold against the storms still brewing in her own heart. A week crawled by in a blur of nightmares and neon. Lucy replaying the tear of fabric in her dreams, waking with her brother's hopeful texts, lighting up her phone like fragile stars. She couldn't shake it, that mix of gratitude and grief, the way Ryder's jacket had felt like armor and apology all at once. So one dusty afternoon, with the Nevada sun baking the cracked pavement outside the Hells Angels garage, a sprawling metal beast humming with the growl of engines and the clang of wrenches, she pulled up in her beat-up Civic, a paper bag clutched in her lap like a peace offering. Her hand shook as she stepped inside, the air thick with the metallic bite of grease and the low rumble of classic rock spilling from a battered radio. Ryder looked up from under the hood of a chopper, grease-streaked and surprised, his laugh booming warm as he wiped his hands on a rag. "Kid, what the hell are you doing here? You didn't have to." But she thrust the bag forward, her voice cracking just a hair. "Apple pie, from scratch. It's my way of saying thank you. Not just for the punch, but for making me feel seen." The other guys gathered round, ribbing him good-naturedly, but their eyes softened as she unpacked the still warm dessert, steam rising like a shared secret. They ate in companionable silence at first, forks scraping plates, the sweetness cutting through the grit, until Tank raised his coffee mug in a toast. "To Lil Angel, the toughest recruit we never asked for." Laughter rippled, easy and real, and in that moment, Lucy felt the first thaw in her chest, a spark of belonging amid the chrome and chaos. But as the sun dipped low, painting the garage in golden hues, Ryder pulled her aside, his voice dropping low. "We ain't saints, Lucy. Got our demons riding shotgun. But you're reminding us why we fight." And just like that, the scales tipped. What started as her salvation became theirs, a quiet pact forged in pie crust and possibility. Months unfurled like miles on an open road, and Lucy wove herself into the club's ragged tapestry, earning her nickname with every small act of defiance against the darkness. She'd roll up to their meetings with Tupperware full of chili, her laughter mingling with their gravelly stories around bonfires that crackled under star-pricked skies. Together, they turned their rough edges toward something brighter. Charity runs snaking through the desert, engines roaring like thunder as they delivered meals to the forgotten. Homeless vets huddled in alley shadows, their eyes hollow from ghosts of foxholes and fallen comrades. Ryder, who'd once drowned his rage in bar fights and backroad regrets, found purpose in those runs, his tattooed arms loading crates with a gentleness that belied the storm within. "These guys," he'd mutter to Lucy one twilight evening, handing a foil-wrapped sandwich to a silver-haired Marine whose medals were long traded for cardboard signs. They came home to silence. "We get it. Ain't about pity. It's about showing up." She'd nod, squeezing his shoulder, feeling the deep human thread pulling taut between them. Sacrifice not in grand gestures, but in the daily grind of showing up scarred and unbowed. Tensions simmered beneath it all, though. The club's old enemies circling like vultures, whispers of raids that kept Ryder's hand itching toward his holster, even in quiet moments. Yet in Lucy's light, he glimpsed redemption, her brother's acceptance letter arriving like a victory flag, funded by tips and tireless nights. She was healing them as much as they had her, proving that family wasn't blood or bylaws, but the fierce choice to stand in the fray. But when shadows lengthened and old threats clawed back, would that fragile bond bend or break under the weight? Then came the night that tested it all, the air electric with desert storm promise as thunder grumbled low on the horizon. Word rippled through the garage like oil on water. The stranger was out, slinking back into Reno with a chip on his shoulder and eyes burning for payback. Lucy heard it first from Viper over coffee, her stomach twisting into familiar knots, but this time, fear didn't root her. It fueled her. She drove to the bar that evening, heart pounding a war drum against her ribs, the Hells Angels trailing discreetly like ghosts on Harleys. The door chime tinkled innocent as ever, but there he was, hunched at the end of the bar, nursing a grudge and a drink, his gaze snapping to her like a trap sprung. The room hushed again, echoes of that fateful tear hanging heavy, but Lucy straightened, her voice steady as sagebrush in wind. "You don't scare me anymore, because real monsters hide in silence, and real strength, it forgives. Not for you, but for me." He rose, looming, fists clenching, a snarl twisting his lip, but the words hung there, raw and unyielding, stripping his bluster bare. Ryder materialized from the shadows, a silent sentinel at her back, his presence a low hum of restrained fury, but he held, sacrificing the easy vengeance for her victory. The man faltered, eyes darting to the floor, then shuffled out into the night without a word, the door slamming like a full stop on his poison. Cheers erupted soft and fierce from the corners, hands clapping her back. But it was Ryder's quiet nod that sealed it. Pride etched deep as any tattoo. As rain began to patter against the windows, washing the tension clean, Lucy turned to him, voice thick. "You saved me once." He chuckled, deep and rumbling, pulling her into a bear hug that smelled of leather and lightning. "Nah, kid, you saved us all." And in that embrace, under the storm's gentle roar, they stood, broken pieces mended not by force, but by the unshakable truth that heroes don't always ride in on white steeds. Sometimes they rumble up on chrome, with scars as their capes and hearts fierce enough to rewrite the ending. What if the next shadow calls?